Students, in our previous class, we have seen that how the British colonial rule and the Industrial Revolution that was started in England affected the Indian textiles. In our today's class, we are going to study how it affected the iron smelters and the factory owners of India. Students, I am sure that you will remember in our previous classes we have learned about the tiger of Mysore. Yes, he is none other than Tipu Sultan, who ruled Mysore till 1799, fought 4 wars with the British and died fighting with his sword in his hand. Tipu's legendary swords are now part of valuable collections in museums in England. His swords were well known for its hard and sharp edge that could easily rip through the opponent's armor. This quality of the sword came from a special type of high carbon steel called woods, which was produced all over South India. Woods is an anglicized version of the Kannada word ukku, Telugu hukku, and Tamil and Malayalam urukku. The meaning of all these words is steel. This steel was produced in many hundreds of smelting furnaces in Mysore. In these furnaces, iron was mixed with charcoal and put inside clay pots. This is how steel ingots were produced and were used for sword making. This process was completely lost by the mid-19th century, and the reason was the conquest of India by the British and imports of iron and steel from England. The colonial government prevented people from entering the reserve forest. This became difficult for them to get iron ore as well as wood from the forest. Now let us talk about TISCO, that is the Tata Iron and Steel Company, which was established in India during the British rule. This company was started in 1912 on the bank of river Subarnarekha. In the year 1904, in the month of April, Charles Weld, an American geologist, along with Dorabji Tata, the eldest son of Jamshedji Tata, were travelling in Chhattisgarh. They were in search of iron ore deposits. One day, after travelling for many hours in the forest, Weld and Dorabji came upon a small village and found a group of men and women carrying baskets of iron ore. These people were the Agraria, a community of iron smelters. They showed them Rajhara Hills, which had one of the finest ores in the world. All through the late 19th century, India was importing steel that was manufactured in Britain, especially for the expansion of railways in India. In 1914, the First World War broke out. Steel produced in Britain now had to meet the demands of war in Europe. So, imports of British steel into India declined, and the Indian railways turned to Tisco for supply of rails. By 1919, the colonial government was buying 90% of the steel manufactured by Tisco. Over time, Tisco became the biggest steel industry within the British Empire. Students, if we observe carefully, we can conclude that iron and steel, as well as the cotton textile industries, expanded in India only when British imports into India declined and the market for Indian industrial goods increased. This happened during First World War and after. As the nationalist movement developed and industrial class became stronger, the demand for government protection became louder. This middle class, which had bloomed out of this industrial revolution in India, started indirectly questioning the British government and demanding the self-government. Thus, the British were forced to fulfill some of their demands in the last decades of colonial rule. So, my dear students, we can conclude that though Indian textiles were once in great demand, were totally vanished, so also the iron smelting was completely forgotten as a result of the colonial rule in India.